Uh, Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone today. And thank you for joining us from different parts of the world today and talking about this very important topic today as well. So firstly, my name is Elizabeth Eggerts, and I am a Gender and Red Plus specialist with the UNDP Climate and Forest team. And on behalf of many of my UNDP colleagues, including my partner in organizing this event, Andrea Aguilar Caseta, we would like to welcome you to this event on climate finance, the catalyst for gender equality and women's empowerment in the forest sector, which is being held during this 66th session of the Commission on the Status of Women. So before we get started, Andrea, would you mind moving to the next slide? Perfect, thanks so much. So we just wanted to flag a few points to participants here. So firstly, today's event will be conducted mainly in English, and that translation will be available also in Portuguese, Spanish, as well as in Bahasa Indonesia. However, given the limitations of Zoom, there is no Indonesian language button that they offer. So instead, we have to select Japanese, but just to note that under the Japanese button, that is where colleagues can find the Bahasa Indonesian interpretation available. So we ask that at this time, you please select your preferred language in the interpretation button on the lower right-hand corner within your Zoom screen now. Perfect. And in addition, as you can see here, today's webinar will be recorded and then also transmitted to Facebook Live. So I think if either Andrea or Carolina, if you could share the link to thank you so much. So where colleagues here can find the link to that chat, if you would like to share it with other colleagues who would like to join us via social media today. And then also just to note, after the panel discussion that we will have today, we will not have a question and answer session, but please feel free to use the chat box again on the lower Zoom bar in your Zoom window to share any questions or comments that you might have for panelists or for the other speakers, and so that they can answer if time permits. In addition, if there's any questions that haven't been answered, we will follow up after the event to answer any questions that are remaining to the best that we can. So to go ahead and get started and to help frame our discussion today, we thought it would be helpful to first provide some brief context of why we're actually here today, speaking about this very important issue. So, as many of us know and have experienced, the world faces unprecedented planetary and social crises caused by not only the COVID-19 pandemic, but also nature loss and climate change. And climate finance can provide a means to help alleviate the situation, as well as help to contribute to green recovery efforts that catalyze social and environmental transformations. And while the current climate finance architecture for the forest sector can be complex, it can and should advance gender equality and women's empowerment. And in addition to some climate forest finance, it can also represent an opportunity for a new generation of gender responsive climate finance as well. So the 66th session of the Commission on the Status of Women presents us with the perfect opportunity to kind of delve a little bit more into this issue and delve into this discussion. And UNDP has taken this opportunity to develop and organize this virtual event to foster a space where experts from various countries around the world can share how they're charting this new path forward through their climate forest finance, as well as to also showcase some good practices from examples from UNDP, the UN RED program, and the governor's climate and forest task force portfolio projects, and showing what they have also done as well. So just to kind of give a brief summary to kick us all off, today we will first have a keynote address by the Minister from the Environment of Costa Rica. And then we'll also have the participation of a prestigious panel made up of colleagues from 5 countries who have worked in REDD+ initiatives in order to help address gender inequalities, as well as to increase the recognition of women's environmental leadership, stewardship, and empowerment. So without further ado, for the official opening of this event, it is an honor to introduce our UNDP Global Gender Director, Raquel Lagunas, who will share and provide welcoming remarks and encourage us to rethink how climate forest finance can work for women. So thank you very much and welcome, Raquel. The floor is yours.
Through climate finance. So it's a very hopeful message of hope, and you will see today with the many examples that we have in this very interesting panel. So what does it mean if we talk about gender equality in forests? It means inclusion, it means recognition, it means amplification of women's voices and agendas, and it means also addressing their different interests. So this may look very abstract, but you will see today how it's very concrete. So for instance, in Ucayali in Peru, it means developing investment plans with a strong component for women's agriculture producers of oil palm, coffee, cocoa. In the Cross River state in Nigeria, it means that women have been actively engaged in the community-based REDD+ actions for a decade. So today, they are recognized as a forest stakeholder group, as a social actor that should benefit from the investment plan. Such examples from the ground and other country experiences that we will hear today in this panel clearly demonstrates that climate finance can be a game changer when women are at the center. So today we will also highlight UNDP's effort with support from the Green Climate Fund, Governor's Climate and Forest Task Force, and the UN REDD program to support countries developing their gender plans across the climate forest initiatives. So it is also a recognition of these very dedicated teams across UNDP offices supporting these efforts. We will see how gender equality is key to unlock transformational changes in climate forest finance. And we will listen the amazing and unique experiences from Brazil, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Ghana, and Indonesia. I think we are going to learn a lot about the challenges, not only about the results, no, also about the barriers that are preventing women from benefiting from the climate forest finance. And together we will reflect on how to address these barriers, how we can scale up good practices. So we go before punctual, random, good work in one country, in one program, to a real scale up, using all of these examples and articulating this for a major goal. So I'm very happy, I'm very proud also to share with all of you that today we are launching the report called The End of Business as It's Usual, Mainstreaming Gender in Jurisdictional Red Plus Approaches. A report that is very unique and highlighting the successful stories that we need to tell and we need to share across the world, from Governors Climate and Forest Task Force on how gender equality can be mainstreamed across the jurisdictional level. So today we have Indonesia to prove and showcase how this is really more than a theory, right? Something theoretical. So before handing over the floor to our keynote address from the Minister of Environment of Costa Rica, I will close by sharing with you some minimum standards, principles of climate forest finance for gender equality, for transformational impact. So we will succeed, and this is what we have learned, when we address ongoing deep-rooted gender barriers and inequalities, when we equitably increase women and men's in all their diversity, access, and control over resources. We will succeed when we value unique and complementary knowledge and skills of women and men, when we improve women's livelihoods and their economic empowerment, and finally, when we are able to generate new sustainable livelihoods, productive and economic opportunities for women in the forest and AFOLU sector. So now is really the time to think on what a new generation of gender-responsive climate finance can look like, and to reflect on these key principles, how to enrich them, which are the principles that are needed to ensure that we are setting up a new paradigm that will lead to a truly environmental and social transformation, connecting planet with people. So that's why we are here today, and much better than me, you will listen from our panelists, and right now from the Minister of Costa Rica, Minister of Environment. Thank you so much. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Raquel. We just want to thank you so much for those inspirational words and suggestions on how we can capitalize on today's discussion to propose a new generation of climate finance that is transformational, addresses prevalent gender inequalities, and empowers women in the forest sector. So, as Raquel mentioned, to continue with our event, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker today, the Minister of the Environment from Costa Rica, Andrea Meza. And Minister Meza apologizes for not being able to join us here today in person, but she has also sent us her keynote address via video. So Minister Meza will be sharing Costa Rica's experience on innovative forest conservation and climate action as a mechanism to advance gender inequality. So without further ado, I pass the floor to Andrea.
Climate finance can undoubtedly be a catalyst to promote gender equality, especially in the forestry sector. In the Costa Rican case, we have made a commitment, first of all, to understand the situation of women in productive activities related to conservation and forestry. And this gap in gender analysis has shown us that there are a series of inequities, some of which are structural, and gave us the key information to begin to understand why we see these patterns and, above all, what the institutions have to do. Women are not only more affected by the effects of climate change, but they also have a transformative power. And what we have to do as states, and from that public policy, is precisely to unleash that transformative potential that women have to move forward with that economy that is decarbonized and that is positive with nature. And some of the elements that we have been doing in the framework of the RED program are oriented along those lines. The first is to recognize that more than 70% of women who work in agricultural production units do so without receiving payment, that is, without any economic benefit. And this leads us to develop economic instruments to address these inequalities. Some of these have been, for example, to develop recognition for agricultural productive units that have actions or that promote these gender equality issues. And how can we do this? Just as we have a recognition for those productive activities that are low in carbon emissions, well, we are also generating this recognition to say, well, these productive units are taken care of by women. And we also realize how many women are beneficiaries of payment for environmental services. And well, we didn't have positive or encouraging numbers. What have we done? Well, we took action and signed a decree to give more points to those applications made by women. We have seen how the numbers started to grow, and well, there are already more beneficiaries of payments for environmental services with this specific measure. It is important to recognize that there is inequality, that there are gaps, and it's important to design public policies to address them. The other big issue we have at the end of the day is land tenure. If you go to the public registry of property, less than 20% of properties are in the name of women, and we are 50% of the population. So we have other inequalities to address. This is why it is fundamental to launch a working process with key institutions in order to address this issue of land tenure. And it is important to see more and more women who are owners of that land. And these are some of the key aspects, because all these actions will lead us to achieve these goals of having net zero emissions by 2050, being positive with nature, focus on inclusion, which is fundamental. And this is what we are addressing with this commitment to public policy instruments.
Great. We would like to thank the Minister for sharing Costa Rica's exemplary experiences and inspirational words. And it's always impressive to hear from countries like Costa Rica that can demonstrate how it can be done, and that climate finance can in fact be a catalyst for inequality and will change for women through new innovative green opportunities. So now our event will continue with an expert panel that will showcase experiences from 5 countries, from Indonesia, Brazil, Costa Rica, Ecuador, and Ghana. And all of these 5 countries are charting a new pathway forward through their climate forest finance via the RED+ initiatives. And now I would like to introduce our moderator for today's panel, Mr. Jose Vicente Toya. And Jose Vicente is not only the UNDP resident representative in Costa Rica, but he's also our gender and environment champion for Latin America and the Caribbean. And it's an honor to welcome you, Jose Vicente, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It is an honor to be here and moderate this unique panel, where we are going to learn firsthand how climate finance can become a tool to address gender inequalities and empower women in the forest sector of different countries, which entail different realities and contexts. The experiences that our colleagues will share today are invaluable and should pave the way for us to think how climate finance could spark a development pathway where women are at the center. Today's conversation comes at a perfect time as countries are recovering from the COVID pandemic and are in urgent need of integral solutions that lead us to green, fair, and gender-responsive recovery. In Costa Rica, as UNDP, we recognize that this is possible and that sustainable development is only achieved if we propose innovative initiatives that have positive socio-economic and environmental impacts. These are the kind of examples that we are going to hear from today. Today's discussion will allow us to do a deep dive into the experiences from 5 countries from different regions of the world and listen to their experiences and their good practices related to, first, ensuring women's active and equitable involvement in RED decision-making and payment for environmental services programs. And second, ensuring women's active and equitable involvement in sustainable forest value chains and RED Plus implementation efforts. It is my great honor to introduce our first speaker from Indonesia, Ms. Ibu Yeni Almutahar, Head of Division of Environmental Management and Monitoring of Environment at the Forestry Office of West Kalimantan. Ms. Almutahar will be speaking in Bahasa, and translation is available through the English channel. Ibu Yeni has worked on environmental matters for almost 22 years, and since 2013 has played a key role as a facilitator in activities related to RED Plus issues in West Kalimantan province and has acted as the head of the Pokia RED Plus task force. She is the key government partner supporting low emissions development and is also a focal point for gender and safeguards. Welcome, Ibu Yeni. We know that as part of the GCF Trust Fund projects, women have been actively involved in all processes, including the development of safeguards, green growth, just to name a few. Could you please share with us how the GCF Trust Fund project has been systematically measuring and tracking women's active participation and influence on decision making? And if there are any results and good practices to share in this regard. Please, Ibu Yeni.
Baik, terima kasih atas kesempatannya.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Selamat pagi, Bapak Ibu sekalian.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor to see you all here this morning.
Untuk share screen-nya dari
For the screen share, may I
panitia,
have
silakan.
a bit of assistance from the committee?
Baik, terima kasih Elizabeth.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Ya, Bapak Ibu sekalian,
Ladies and
senang sekali pada
gentlemen,
hari ini saya
I
Yeni,
am very
saya dari
glad
Dinas
to meet you
Lingkungan
all.
Hidup
My
di
name
Provinsi
is
Kalimantan
Yani
Barat bisa
from
bergabung
the
di dalam kesempatan ini
Forestry
dan sangat
Agency
merasa
in
terhormat bisa
Kalimantan.
berbagi
It's my honor
terkait
to
dengan
share with
bagaimana
you all
sebenarnya
in relation
kesamaan
to the
di
mainstreaming
Provinsi
of
Kalimantan
gender
Barat
in
tersebut.
West Kalimantan province. Next slide, please.
Ya, sedikit kami ceritakan tentang sebenarnya
A
Kalimantan
little
Barat
bit
itu
of
seperti apa.
overview
Kalimantan Barat merupakan
or
salah satu
introduction about West
provinsi di Indonesia
Kalimantan.
yang
West Kalimantan is one of the
luas
provinces
hampir
in
14 juta
Indonesia
hektar dan
with a total
30%
area of
diantaranya
more than
adalah merupakan suku Buton.
147,000 kilometers
Provinsi
square.
ini terdiri dari
And
14 kabupaten
this
kota,
province consists of 12
2031 desa
districts
dan juga
2,031 villages, and with the population of 5.4 million, 51% is men.
Nah, sebenarnya di Kalimantan Barat
Actually,
sendiri sudah
in
ada
West
regulasi
Kalimantan,
yang memayungi
there
terkait dengan pengarus utama
is
gender,
already
yaitu melalui
a
Peraturan
regulation on
Gubernur
gender
Nomor
mainstreaming.
15
The
Tahun
first one is
2016
Governor's
tentang
Regulation
petunjuk
number
pengarus utama gender dalam
2016,
pembangunan
sorry, number
Provinsi
15,
Kalimantan Barat.
2016 concerning
Dan
guidelines
terkait
for
dengan
gender
tutupan
mainstreaming.
hutan dan juga perubahan
And in
iklim,
regards
sejak
to
tahun
the
2010,
forest
Kalimantan
coverage,
Barat telah menjadi anggota
since
dari
2010,
Garuda
West
Climate
Kalimantan
and
has been a member
Task Force
of
atau
the
GCFTF, dan sejak
GCFTF.
saat itu
And
aktif dan
since
juga mencoba untuk
then, West
mendapatkan
Kalimantan has
pendanaan
been very
lingkungan
actively
dari window
involved
yang
to
ada
get
di
the
program.
funding
Dan
both through
kita
window
berhasil ya pada
A
tahun
and window B
2019
projects.
mendapatkan
And in
pendanaan dari
2019, we have been
project yang
successfully to
berlangsung dari bulan April
receive the
2019 sampai
funding.
dengan 2020.
And the
Dan
project
kemudian
was started
dilanjutkan
in April
pada tahun
2019 up
2021
to
mulai bulan
June
Juli kita memulai project
2023.
window B
Since
bersama
July
GCFTF
2021, we've started
sampai
the
dengan
window
nanti
B
di tahun
project. The window B project
2023 di
will
bulan Juni.
finish in
Dan
June
dalam pelaksanaan proyek
2023.
ini mulai dari
In the
awalnya sampai
implementation of the
dengan
project
sekarang itu
from the
peran
beginning
perempuan
up to
sangat
now,
penting
the
di dalam semua
role
prosesnya.
of the
Lanjut.
woman has been considered very, very crucial. Next slide, please.
Nah, ini kami ingin menunjukkan bagaimana
I want
sebenarnya
to
kita
show
tingkat
you
partisipasi
how
gender
we
di dalam
measure
kedua
the
kegiatan
participations
tersebut,
of
baik dari
women
project
and
window A
men,
maupun project window B.
both
Pada saat
from
project
window
window
A
A,
and
kita
B
hanya
project.
melihat
In
bagaimana
window A project, we only
kehadiran
see
dari kaum perempuan.
the
Tapi di project window B ini dengan
participations
bantuan
of
dari rekan-rekan
women.
IDH,
In the
kita
window B
mengembangkan
project,
mekanisme
we
untuk menghitung tidak
developed a
hanya
mechanism to
kehadirannya,
measure
tetapi
not
juga
only their
bagaimana mereka
attendance,
mampu
but
menyampaikan
also
pendapat dan juga apakah
the
pendapat mereka
level
itu
of their
disetujui atau tidak.
participations
Dan
and
ternyata
whether their
dari hasil
participation
hitungan
is
yang kita lihat,
acknowledged or not. From the
ternyata
data that we have
sebagian besar
gained,
pendapat perempuan itu
most
didengar
of
dan
the
diterima
women's
oleh
opinions
yang hadir
are
dalam rangka
accepted by other
meningkatkan tujuan
participants.
kita untuk melindungi
And
hutan
this
dan juga
has
menurunkan emisi.
improved
Nah, di sebelah kanan,
our
Bapak Ibu bisa lihat bagaimana
achievement of
contoh
goals
dari
to conserve
tabel
the
pengamatan yang
environment.
digunakan yang telah
On
dikembangkan
the
juga oleh
right
project
side,
manajernya.
you can see
Lanjut.
the table that we have developed. Next slide, please.
Dan ini bagaimana kita
And this is how we
mengimplementasikannya, Bapak Ibu sekalian.
implement
Jadi mulai dari
the
sebelum
program,
kegiatan itu
starting
dilaksanakan,
from the
kemudian
pre-activities
selama kegiatan dilaksanakan, dan
and
juga
during the
setelah kegiatan
activities and
dilaksanakan.
also
Sebelum
post
dilaksanakan, kita harus
the
memastikan
activities.
dulu bahwa
Before
semuanya itu memahami
pre-activities, we want to
prinsip
ensure that
pengarus utama gender itu
everyone
harus dilaksanakan.
understand
Nah, selama
that the
aktivitas itu
mainstreaming
semuanya
gender
mengarah ke
concept
sana,
is
kemudian
implemented.
dievaluasi,
And after
mendokumentasikan, dan
that, we
setelah
evaluate and
aktivitas
document that.
dilakukan itu
And
kita
during
mulai
the
melihat
activities,
apakah
we
sudah
start
tercapai atau
seeing
tidak, dan itu terus
whether
dilakukan
these indicators have been
peningkatan.
achieved
Nah,
and
ini
what
adalah
needs
contoh
to
ya di
be
sebelah kanan template yang
improved.
kita buat
On the
mulai
right, you
dari
can see
awal
the
sejak
template that we have
penyusunan tour dan
created
proposal,
from the beginning.
bahwa
Since
sudah
we
ada
created the tour and
template
proposals,
terkait
we
dengan
have
pengarus utamaan gender.
made the
Lanjut.
template for
Dan
gender
itu
mainstreaming.
digunakan
Next
ya
slide,
Bapak Ibu
please.
sekalian di dalam
And
pelaksanaan.
we are using this template. Next slide, please.
Lanjut. Dan ini
And
beberapa
this
dokumentasi praktek-praktek
are
yang kita
some
lakukan,
of the
termasuk
documents
bagaimana
of the
misalnya review
practices,
dari
documentation of the
proposal itu
practices that
dilakukan
we
supaya
used
sejalan
since
dengan
the
tujuan
beginning of
kita
the
dan juga
proposal
memastikan
to
bahwa
ensure that
prinsip
everything is
pengarus utama
aligned.
gender
And
itu
we
telah
want to
dilakukan.
ensure that the
Lanjut.
principles of the mainstreaming gender is implemented. Next slide, please.
Nah, di sini kami ingin menggambarkan
Here,
kepada Bapak Ibu bagaimana
I would
sebenarnya
like to
keterlibatan
show
gender itu
you
dilakukan
the
dan didokumentasikan
participation
dengan
of the
baik, dan
gender is
bagaimana
implemented
para
and
pemimpin
how
perempuan itu memegang peranan
the
yang
women
penting di dalam
leaders
pelaksanaan yang bisa
really
memberikan
have an
rasa
important
yakin
roles
bahwa ya,
in the
kaum perempuan
project,
itu bisa
and
mengutarakan
we can
pendapatnya,
ensure
bisa
that the
diterima pendapatnya,
women's
dan bisa menunjukkan
participations are
eksistensinya di
accepted
dalam
and they
sebuah
can
kegiatan. Jadi kalau misalnya kita
show
balik tahun 2010
their
itu tidak
existence.
banyak
And
perempuan
if we
yang
look
terlibat
back in
ya, terutama di
2010,
Kalimantan
there
Barat
are
dalam isu
not many
kepemimpinan iklim,
women
tapi sekarang ini sudah sangat banyak yang
involved
bisa
in the
dilihat dari
project.
dokumentasi yang
However,
kami
now we
sajikan
can
ini.
see there
Lanjut.
is a big change in growth. Next slide, please.
Nah, ini kami ingin menggambarkan bagaimana sebenarnya pelajaran
In
yang
this
kami
slide,
terima
we
bahwa memang
want
untuk
to
pengarus
show
utamaan
you
gender
the
itu
lessons
perlu
learned
didukung oleh
during our
pertama aspek
program.
legalitas. Itu
Firstly,
sangat penting untuk
the
memberikan
gender
rasa aman hukum.
mainstreaming and
Dan yang
development
kedua, harus
implementation
ada kerjasama
requires
dari semua
support
pihak
from
yang
the
terlibat
government,
serta komitmen
and
untuk
it
menjalankannya.
requires
Nah, selain
the
itu juga
cooperation and
perlu
commitment.
dikembangkan
And also the standard indicator mechanism need to be developed, and the technique to evaluate and to make sure that the active involvement of the women can be documented, can be reported, and can be evaluated. And in addition, the presence of the women leaders are important to boost the confidence of the women involved from the level of village up to the government. In addition, the collaboration on the management level is very crucial to ensure that everything is aligned and to really fulfill and the standard and that we have set in the beginning. In the climate finance, we want to make sure that the climate finance can involve the collaboration and participation of women in environmental conservation and the carbon emission, and also to support the development of mechanisms so that gender mainstreaming can be measured and can be documented, and also to ensure the involvement of women in climate conservation on the local and national levels. And the climate finance that we have received through the GCFTF has been able to support us to really fulfill our dreams to support the women. Thank you very much.
Terima kasih, Ibu Yeni, for sharing.
Thank you, Ibu Yeni.
It is remarkable to see how your project has ensured that local women can fully and effectively and actively participate in all the stages of the RED Plus process. To continue this interesting conversation, I would like to invite Ms. Monique Sacardo Ferreira, Deputy Project Coordinator in the Department of Forest Conservation and Environmental Services at the Ministry of Environment of Brazil. Ms. Sacardo Ferreira will be speaking in Portuguese, and translation is available through the English channel. Monique is an environmental engineer with a master's in cartographic sciences, working for almost 10 years as a public servant in the federal government of Brazil. She has been responsible for preparing and submitting Brazil's funding proposal for the Green Climate Fund results-based payment pilot program, and currently supports the implementation of the Brazil's GCF project Floresta Plus Amazonia and the National Red Plus strategy. Welcome, Monique. We have heard that the Floresta Plus project is planning on implementing several innovative activities to ensure that women can effectively participate in the activities and equitably benefit from Brazil's Payment for Environmental Services program, known as Floresta Plus. As the project has just recently started, could you please share some details of how Floresta Plus is designed to ensure that women can effectively participate in and equitably benefit from it? Please, Monique.
Claro, bom dia a todos.
Of course, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. I will be sharing my screen. Just a second.
Bom, como
Well, like Jose just mentioned, the Brazilian project is a project that is very incipient, is just beginning to be implemented, but we have been inviting great efforts to introduce gender equality in its implementation. The project, just to give an overview, is a project that aims to support the implementation of the Brazilian contribution to the Paris Agreement and the improvement of the National RED strategy. And we are trying to do that by developing an instrument of payment for environmental services that will be distributed into four support modalities. Two of the modalities, which are conservation and recovery, are guided towards small rural producers, and direct payments will be made to this public. And the communities modality aims to provide payment for environmental services for indigenous peoples and traditional communities in collective territories. So here we will be working with projects, and the innovation modality is a modality that seeks to involve startups and civil society organizations in an innovation environment in the Brazilian Amazon. As I have mentioned, this project will support the improvement of the National RED strategy and our timeline. We began preparing this proposal in 2018. In 2019, we had the Green Climate Fund approving our proposal. It was the first proposal in the payment window for the fund, and at that time, the great landmarks for our project were the funding proposal itself, where we had the project design, a preliminary gender evaluation and plan. And why preliminary? Because ever since we elaborated this project, it was very clear that we needed to discuss this with our beneficiaries. It made no sense to define all of the details of the project without engaging the different stakeholders involved in each modality. It is a very diverse public, and we have a sub-project for each modality, so we needed more time to better understand how the project would work, and we did this very intensely. It was a very intense process between 2020 and 2021. We worked in developing our operational manual and our environmental study. So in these documents, we included the gender aspect, and I will let you know how that worked. This year,
Monique, oh, really fast.
Monique,
I don't mean to interrupt, but did you want to switch the slides? Are they?
Eu mudei.
I have.
It still shows, I'm so sorry for this. It's still showing on the cover slide for
Wow.
our view.
Wow. For me, it's in the timeline.
Would it be helpful if I share it and we can test it out and let me know if it's showing up okay? Would that work okay? I'm so sorry. I'm not sure why it's doing that. We will blame Zoom. Okay, hold on 1 second.
May I?
Yes, I'm just going to share my screen.
Okay, so
Give me 1 quick second. Sorry.
No problem.
Okay. Okay.
I can share it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. I'm not sure. Yep. It's taking a while to load.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, bom, aqui eu já falei, são as 4
Well,
modalidades.
as I have mentioned, here we have the 4 modalities for the implementation of the project. We have the conservation modality, the recovery modality, which are destined for small farmers, which will receive direct payments, the communities modality, which is guided towards indigenous peoples and traditional peoples, and the innovation modality, the Floresta Plus innovation modality that will support NGOs and CSOs. Next one, please. So here's our timeline. just making clear that in the two first years of implementation of this project, we have worked intensely to better design the project and listen to our beneficiaries, and therefore we and in this we also include this gender equality perspective. And now we're moving to a new stage of the project, which is the implementation of the payments for environmental services. And throughout time, we have a timeline up until 2026 to carry out monitoring and evaluation and to improve our strategies because we need experience to improve them. However, we have tried to foresee all of the elements that are necessary to promote gender equality in the project. Next one, please. I'd like to highlight two points that were fundamental in this process of refining the project design and in the social environmental impact study that created a revised gender plan, which were perhaps the measures that were more emblematic, at least for me, as someone who participated in in this process ever since the beginning. The first point I'd like to highlight would be that for the conservation and recovery modality, which is the one where we make direct payments to small farmers, the public system that we will use to verify the criteria to see who qualifies for our project, it didn't used to have gender identification is the Environmental Rural Registry. It is a federal government database, but that was not disaggregated by gender. So we didn't have a way of planning our targets for the project without this disaggregation. So we made great efforts to align this database with other databases made available by the federal government to arrive at a clearer diagnosis of what our potential universe for women and men beneficiaries was, and then establish short, medium, and long-term goals for the project. And this was a very intense process that counted with statistical analysis. It was a very interesting process for us because we came to understand that the first step is having this disaggregated database. If we want to act, we need to start from scratch. So it was a very interesting exercise. And another point that I think is very interesting, and it's connected to what I said before about this process of refining the project design in dialogue with the beneficiaries. This was a guiding principle for us ever since the beginning, and the holding of workshops to have discussions with women was very important in this. We had a team that carried out the social environmental impact study, but the main measures that were proposed for gender mainstreaming what came about by listening to our women beneficiaries. So this is fundamental for a gender plan that is more related to reality and having this space to give voice to women and men in an equal manner. And we understand that at this time we need to create a better environment for women's participation given the context that we have not only in Brazil but in the world for women participation in these debates. Next one, please. Well, and then once we carried out this entire process, which was very intense last year, we were able to have this database and these studies. And to become more involved in the communication with our beneficiaries, we were able to set new goals for the project and revise our targets. And today we have targets for each modality for the distribution of payment for environmental services in the modalities which are for small rural producers. We have a target of reaching 30% women farmers and 10% of women who are uh, the the main providers for the families, and we have criteria and targets related to the gender theme in the projects. The technical team responsible for the management of the project needs to be composed by women as well, and also innovation targets. We have been working with projects for women beneficiaries, but also guaranteeing that women are part of the teams that are designing the projects. Next slide, please. These targets are very ambitious, and the diagnosis that we carried out is of a very challenging environment, but we have a series of actions that are able so that we are able to reach our targets. We have actions that are divided into 4 action axes. The first one is governance, where we intend to encourage that the advisory and assistance committees for the project have women participants, and we have asked these institutions to appoint both men and women. And I think this is very interesting because we always say, oh, how are we going to ask an institution to appoint a, a woman? But if the institution appoints 2 people, why can't one of them be women? That's not a bad request. So this has been very enlightening for us in the ministry while managing the project with UNDP, how these measures can be very effective. And another measure is the measure of hiring a gender specialist in the project to help us implement these actions. We have a lot of actions geared to capacity building, both in both for the project team, but also for the actors involved in the project at different levels. We have also actions related to monitoring, where we will be assembling a disaggregated database, disaggregated by gender, so that we can evaluate if we're meeting our goals and promoting this equal participation, and also communication, thinking about communication actions that are targeted to women and the scheduling of meetings in times that are more likely to achieve the participation of women. So a number of actions that we have been implementing to improve women's engagement. So that's what I had as a presentation. So we are just beginning to implement this project. We have a long way ahead of us, but either way, I'd like to introduce just a tidbit of a fact, a curiosity, so to speak. Portuguese is a language that is has where the words are gendered, and floresta is a feminine word. So I'd like to end on that note. Thank you very much.
Obrigado, Monique. It is impressive to hear
Thank you,
how
Monique.
you have been able to integrate gender as part of the DNA of the project since the beginning. We wish you the best of luck implementing the activities and hope that next year you can come back and share the results. Now switching to Spanish. Nuestra próxima presentadora Es una colega
Our next
cercana con quien la
presenter
Oficina
is
del
a
Perú de
close
Costa Rica
colleague and
ha
friend
trabajado.
of the
Es un
UNDP's
honor
Costa
para mí
Rica
dar la
office.
bienvenida a la
It
señora
is my
María
honor
Elena
to
Herrera
welcome
de la
Ms. Maria Elena
Secretaría de
Herrera
Red
from
Plus
the
en
Red Plus
Fonafifo.
Secretariat in
La
Fonafifo.
señora Herrera hablará en
Ms.
español
Herrera
y la
will be
traducción
speaking in
está
Spanish and
disponible a
translation
través
is
del canal
available through the
inglés.
English channel.
María Elena es ingeniera
Maria
forestal con más
Elena
de
is a
20 años
forest
de
engineer
experiencia
with more than
trabajando con el
20 years
sector
of
público
experience
y
working
privado.
with the private and
Actualmente
public
trabaja
sector.
en el Fondo
She currently
Nacional de
works
Financiamiento
at the
Forestal,
National Fund for
FONAFIFO,
Forestry
como
Financing,
coordinadora de la
FONAFIFO,
Estrategia
as
Nacional RED
coordinator of
y
the
es
National Red
co-creadora
Plus
del Plan
strategy.
de
She's
Acción de
also the
Género
co-creator
para
of
la
the Gender
Estrategia
Action
Nacional
Plan
RED
for the
Plus,
National Red
el
Plus
cual es uno de los
strategy,
primeros 5
which is one
planes
of
de
the
acción de
first
género
5 Red
RED
Plus
Plus
GAPs
desarrollados para
developed to
abordar el
address
cambio
climate
climático
change
con
with
acciones
nature-based
basadas en la
actions,
naturaleza, colocando a las mujeres en el centro de los
with
mismos.
women at the
Bienvenida,
center.
María Elena.
Welcome, Maria Elena.
De la ministra que se están
We
logrando
heard
avances muy
from the Minister
importantes
of Costa
para
Rica that
garantizar que
you're
las mujeres
making
puedan
impressive
acceder y
progress to
beneficiarse
ensuring
de
that women
créditos
can access
forestales
and
e
benefit from
incentivos
forest
ambientales
credits and
como el
environmental
PSA, que
incentives,
es parte
such
de
as the
su estrategia
PES,
nacional
which is
Red
part of
Plus.
your National Red Plus
¿Podría
strategy.
contarnos más detalles
Could you tell me
sobre
more
cómo se ha
details
logrado
about
esto
how you
y
have
cuáles son las
achieved
lecciones
this
aprendidas
and the lessons
que
you have
podrían
learned
aplicarse a otros
that could
países?
be scaled up
Asimismo,
to other
¿qué otros
countries,
próximos
as well
pasos
as the
para
next
continuar el
steps to
trabajo
continue the
a
work
través del proyecto
through
del
your
Fondo Verde del
payment for
Clima de
results
pago basado en resultados?
GSIV project?
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Buenos días, buenas
Good
tardes,
morning,
buenas noches.
good
Muchas gracias,
afternoon,
don
good
Vicente,
evening.
mucho gusto.
Thank you,
Gracias a
Vicente.
todas
It's a
y todos
pleasure.
los que nos están
And
siguiendo.
thank you to each and every one of
Gracias
you
por
who
la
is here
invitación. El
today.
día de hoy,
Thank
sí,
you
como
for
dijo
the
la
invitation
señora
to be here.
ministra, doña
And
Andrea Mesa.
yes, as Madam Minister
Hemos
Andrea
desarrollado una
Mesa
serie de
said
acciones
earlier,
gracias a
we
una serie
have
de procesos que
implemented a
venimos
series of
realizando
actions thanks
desde
to
hace algunos años
processes
atrás.
that
Yo les
began
voy a contar
several
un
years
poquito
ago. I
cómo hemos
will
ido
be
promoviendo
sharing
esa política
part
pública y
of
cómo
how
hemos
we
ido haciendo
have
acciones para
promoted the
ir
public
garantizándonos
policy,
la
the
participación de
actions
las
we have
mujeres.
taken to promote women participation
Mi
in Costa
mi
Rica.
aspecto central lo voy a basar en cómo
The
esta
main topic of my
participación la hemos ido
presentation
basando en
is how
esquemas o mecanismos de
participation has been
financiamiento
based
que les
on
permita a ellas
finance mechanisms
formar parte de la
that
distribución de
have
los
enabled
beneficios.
women to
Perdón.
receive
En Costa Rica,
benefits
solo
more
para
equally.
contextualizar,
In Costa
somos
Rica,
una
just to
población
give
de
you more
5 millones de
context,
habitantes,
we
5
have
millones 100 mil
5 million
habitantes,
inhabitants,
y el 50% de la
slightly over
población son
5 million
mujeres. Y
inhabitants,
sin
and
embargo,
50% of our
solo,
population
como dijo
are
la
women.
señora ministra, un
However,
15%
only,
de
as our
las
minister said
mujeres que
earlier,
tenemos título de propiedad de la
15%
tierra
of women have
tenemos
ownership
acceso
over
a la
land
misma. Y prueba de
and
ello es
have
que además
access
de
to
tener
land.
solo el 15% de
And
acceso,
besides having only a 50%
nuestros
access to
espacios productivos son
our
menores a
land,
10
our
hectáreas.
productive
Esto lo alcanzamos cuando
participation in productive
realizamos en el
processes are in less than
2019
10
el plan de
hectares.
acción de género y
This is what
realizamos un
we
análisis de
found
brechas
when
de
we
género.
did the Gender Action
Este
Plan in
proceso
Costa
nos
Rica, which
permitió
started
identificar
by
una serie de
analyzing the gaps
acciones
for women
que
in Costa
debíamos de
Rica.
promover tanto a nivel
After this
institucionales
analysis,
como de
we
política
understood that there were
pública
a
para darle
series of actions that
participación
we
a la
needed
mujer.
to
Y fue así
take
como en el
in public policy to
2019
guarantee
las
women
autoridades en su
participation.
momento
So in
generaron
2019,
una directriz
the
ministerial que
local
nos
authorities
enfocaba a las
enacted
instituciones
a
del ministerio
ministerial
trabajar en
directive
temas de género.
that
Y
gave
después,
us a
en ese
process
mismo
to
año, logra
act to
formar,
promote gender
firmar
actions. That same
y
year,
oficializar el programa Más Mujeres, Más Natura,
the program More
para
Women,
reducir
More
las brechas
Nature
de género
was
en agua,
adopted to try to
bosques
reduce
y
gender
áreas
gaps
protegidas.
in
A partir
water,
de ahí y con el
natural
análisis de
protected
género de
areas and
red,
forests.
siendo FONAFIFO
With
una de las
the analysis
instituciones
of gender gaps
marcadas
carried
en la
out by
estrategia,
RED
se
as well,
realizan una
since
serie de
FONAFIFO
procesos.
became a part of a
Entonces, el
strategy,
primero que
a
les voy
series
a
of
hablar es el
processes were
programa de pago de
adopted.
servicio
The
ambiental.
first one I want to
El
share with you
programa de
today
pago de
is
servicio
the
ambiental se
Payment for
implementa desde
Environmental Service
1996
program,
y
which
si no es
was
porque han
implemented
existido
since
una serie
1996.
de financiamientos externos que
And
la
thanks
institución ha
to
tenido que ir promoviendo acciones para darle
finance that
participación
the
a la mujer.
organization
Entonces,
has
por ejemplo, hubo dos
received, it has been
créditos
possible to promote
antes que
credits
obligaban
for
o
women.
promovían,
In the
no
past,
digamos
there were two
obligaban, promovían
different
en la
types of credit
institución
schemes
darle
that
participación a las mujeres.
promoted women
Estos
participation.
créditos
These
dieron el primer
credits
avance.
were the
Con la
first step
implementación del
to
programa
getting
Más
where we
Mujeres
are
Más
today.
Natura,
With the
resulta
implementation
ser
of the
que se promueven
program
una
More
serie
Women,
de
More Nature,
iniciativas y en la matriz
a
de
series of
valoración de
initiatives were
las áreas de
promoted,
bosque,
and
porque el programa tiene
an
diferentes
analysis of
modalidades,
women
pero
participation
en la
in forest
actividad de
areas.
protección de bosque,
When it comes to
como los
forest
recursos son
conservation and
escasos
forest
para abordar la
protection,
alta
since
demanda en el
resources
programa,
are simply
desarrollamos
not
una
enough for
matriz
the
de
high demand we
indicadores.
have,
Esa
we
matriz de
generated a series of
indicadores
indicators to
no
measure
tenía
women
una opción para
participation,
las mujeres,
and
siendo que
those
somos las que tenemos
indicators
menos
in the
tierra.
past had not considered women at all
Entonces,
because,
la
as I said
primera acción
before, women have very
afirmativa que
little
se
land
realiza
ownership. So the first affirmative
es
action
insertar en
that
esa
was
matriz
adopted
25
was
puntos adicionales para que
inserting
cuando
25 additional
ingresan
points to the
propuestas de
matrix so
PSA
that when
protección en manos de
proposals
mujeres
for
reciban estos
PES
25
in
puntos
the hands of
adicionales.
women were
Esto se empezó a
presented, they would
implementar en
receive
el
those
año
25 additional
2020
points.
y el mapa que
This
les muestro
began
aquí
in 2020,
muestra
and
cómo
in the
del
map that
2020
you
al
see here on the
2021
screen, you can see
estas son
how
las
from
fincas
2020
o
to
los contratos de
2021, there
PSA
are a
que se
series
han
of
ido formalizando
PES
con mujeres,
contracts that were signed
¿verdad?
with
Y
women.
entonces vemos cómo en el mapa
So
le pedí
what
a
you
mis
can see
compañeros
here in this map,
de monitoreo del programa que colocaran el
which
IDS, que es el
monitors
índice de
the program,
desarrollo social que se
we
usa
are
en el plan.
including the Social Development
¿Por qué?
Index,
Porque
that's
la
the
categoría
IDS
en la
that
que
you can see on
están
the
esos
screen,
contratos en color naranja
because the
son
categories of those
distritos
contracts, which you find
y
in orange,
cantones con
are in
desarrollo social
districts
más
and
bajo, muy
cantons of
crítico.
very low
Y
social
vemos como una
development in
acción
Costa Rica.
afirmativa para
So
beneficiar a
we
las
have
mujeres
noticed that with
también
an
está
affirmative
apoyando
action to
a
benefit
revertir
women,
esta
there have
pobreza en
been
las
very
zonas
positive
rurales. ¿Por qué?
impacts in
Porque
terms
esos
of
6.000
combating
contratos
poverty in those
representan
areas,
aproximadamente en
because
los
those
próximos 10
100,000
años
contracts
más
will
de 4
represent that in
millones
the
de
next 10
dólares
years,
colocados
over
en
$4
fincas en
million
manos de mujeres.
will be
Una
provided to
pequeña
farms
acción
in the hands of
afirmativa lo que
women
está
in Costa
generando en
Rica.
campo.
So this is
Por
what a
eso
small
es
affirmative
importante
action
que
can
cuando
do in
desarrollamos
practice.
política
And
pública
that's why it's
veamos
so
estos
important that when
aspectos.
we are creating
Más
public
de
policy, we analyze these
145
details.
contratos en
Over
protección de bosque,
145
en índices de
forest
desarrollo
protection
social y una vez
contracts
más
have been
confirmamos lo
signed,
que dice el
and that is
análisis de brechas de
considering
género
those
que
areas of
desarrollamos en
the
la
Social
estrategia,
Development
donde
Index.
las áreas
And
donde
part
están
of the
los bosques es donde
strategy
hay más
was
presencia de
also
mujeres. Sí,
trying to
claro,
find
porque ahí
more
están los
presence of
contratos en
women in
manos de
forest
mujeres, pero
areas,
también
because again,
estamos
these were
promoviendo
contracts
o
that were
somos
signed
agentes
specifically for
importantes de
projects with women,
conservación
but
porque en
we're
esas
also
áreas
trying to
es donde hay
promote
más cantidad de
conservation
bosque.
in those areas because of the very high
El
forest
otro tema
coverage
que
there
les quiero
is.
mencionar fue el
Another
crédito
topic that I
FONAFIFO a tu
want to
lado,
mention
también
is
en el
the
marco del programa Más
FONAFIFO a
Mujeres
tu
Más
lado
Natura.
credit. This was part of the
Este
same
crédito
program,
inicia en
More
el año
Women, More
2020
Nature.
también
This credit
con otra
began to be
acción
given
afirmativa
in the year
institucional.
2020. This
Y
was
era que
another
si bien había
institutional
un crédito en
affirmative
la
action.
institución, no se
And
había
even though a
focalizado
credit
un crédito para
existed in the
mujeres.
past before, it
Entonces
was not
surge un
specifically
crédito
for
dedicado
women.
a
So this
mujeres
was the first
con tasas del
credit
4%
thought for
anual, con
women
plazos
with
hasta 10 años,
4%
con
yearly
diferentes
rates,
garantías
with terms
fiduciarias
of
e
up to 10
hipotecarias,
years,
dependiendo del
and with
monto,
different
con más de
trust and
5
mortgage
líneas de
guarantees
trabajo para las
depending on the
mujeres
amounts, with
y con
over
requisitos
5
muy
lines of work for
accesibles.
women and
¿Qué
very
nos damos
accessible
cuenta en la
requirements
implementación de estos
for those who were
créditos? Que las
interested
mujeres
in
están
getting these
ansiosas o
credits.
necesitan
What we saw
oportunidades
when
para
this
poder
credit was approved is that women were
participar en la
truly
economía
eager
rural.
to participate in rural
Entonces, en el
economy.
2020
So in the
colocamos
year
más de
2020,
15 créditos
over
en 10
15 credits
cantones,
were
de los
given
cuales
in 10
5 están en
cantons, out
índices
of
de
which
desarrollo social
5
muy bajos. O sea, la
have
mitad
a very low social
de
development
los
index.
proyectos
So
que
half of the
colocamos
projects that
se
we
encontraban en 5
started
cantones con
funding
índices de
were in
desarrollo
the
social muy
5
bajos. ¿Cuáles son las
low social
actividades que en ese
development
año pidieron las
districts.
mujeres? Bueno,
So
sistemas
the activities that
agroforestales,
women were
ecoturismo,
involved in at the
viveros.
time were
Y vean qué
agroforestal
interesante,
system,
siendo Costa Rica un país tan
ecotourism,
pequeño,
and even though Costa Rica is
solo
a
15
very
créditos
small
colocados en
country,
el 2020
only 15
representaron
credits were
71
given in
millones de colones, que
2020, and that
aproximadamente
still
son
represented
119
reaching
mil dólares en
71
este momento.
million colones,
Entonces,
which is
pasamos
approximately
al año 2021, seguíamos
$119,000.
con una pandemia,
So
no
now
sabíamos
in the
cómo
year
se iba a
2021,
comportar
we were
y sin
still in the middle of
embargo,
the pandemic. We
las
didn't
mujeres
know if this
solicitaron
would continue to
10
have
créditos
traction,
en este
and
momento
yet women did apply for
con
10 credits. That's what we have
con
given out
actividades de
so
capital
far,
de trabajo, ya nos pidieron capital
or
de trabajo, siguió siendo
working
ecoturismo, sistemas
capital for
agroforestales y esta
ecosystem,
vez, a pesar de que no eran 15, eran
systems.
10, ya se animaron a
And
pedir más porque
even though
fueron 60
they
millones
were
de
not
colones,
15, they
que
were
son
now 10,
aproximadamente 101
it
mil
is still a very
dólares.
significant amount of money, the
Igual,
approximate
el
of
67% de los
$101,000.
que colocamos en
And
el 2021
67%
estaban
of the
en índices de
projects
desarrollo
in
social bajos.
2021
Estamos
were
promoviendo
in
desarrollo rural.
low
Estamos
social
generando
development index areas. So we are
economías en las
promoting
zonas
social
rurales.
development,
Otro de los
promoting economic
aspectos que nos
growth
dimos a
in
la
those
tarea
areas.
de
Another of
promover era
the
que en el
actions
plan
that
de
we
acción de género
promoted
se identificó
as part
desarrollar
of the
un
Gender
sello.
Action
Un
Plan
sello que
was
no
developing
implicara o
a
un
seal, a
certificado o una
certificate,
certificación que no implicara un
and this
costo para la mujer,
certificate
pero que a
was
nivel
meant to
del
be free of
gobierno
cost for
pudiéramos hacer
women,
acciones
but
que permitieran a las mujeres
at the government
participar e
level, it
irlas
would help to promote
visibilizando e ir
women
haciendo
participation,
encadenamientos o ir
make their
promoviendo
participation more visible as
otros
well,
instrumentos. Entonces,
by
el
trying
galardón de
to
igualdad de
implement other
género para
instruments where
unidades
they could be
productivas
involved. So
fue
this is
una
the
iniciativa en el
award
marco del
of
Plan de
gender
Acción de
equality for
Género que
productive
recibimos
units. This
financiamiento
was another
de Biofin,
aspect of
una
the Gender
iniciativa más
Action
de
Plan.
PNUD
We
que nos
got
ayudó a financiar
funding
esta
from the
herramienta
UNDP
para
as well,
hacerla,
and this
para hacer la
tool
plataforma web.
helped
Hasta
to
el día
create
de
a
hoy
website.
ya tenemos la plataforma,
Until
estábamos en
today,
un proceso de
we have
selección del
finished
comité
the web
evaluador
page. We're
de
in the
las
middle of
fincas.
selecting
Es un comité
the
técnico para que
evaluating committee. It's a
los
technical
requisitos que
committee that will
ingresen a
be in charge of
las
deciding
señoras
who
que
the
ingresen a
award
este
goes
galardón,
to
que este
analyze the
comité nos
requirements
apoyemos a
of women
revisar
who will
todas
be
los
candidates for
espacios
this award.
productivos. Esto es
And
de
we will
forma
be
individual,
analyzing all of the
no tiene
productive
un costo,
areas.
las mujeres
This
pueden
is
ingresar
again
sus
free
fincas.
of
Hay un
charge
manual
for
de
women. They
procedimientos
can
para
simply
ingresar al
apply for
galardón.
this award. There
Tiene
are
una nota
requirements
mínima
and
de
a process that
85
women must
puntos.
follow.
¿Y qué
They have
queremos
to
con
meet
esto?
up to
Bueno,
85
pues ir
points.
eliminando esas brechas de
And
género
what we
desde
want
las
is to close
economías
the gender
familiares
gaps in
para
the
ir
family
visibilizando
economies
las unidades
so that
productivas y
productive
cómo las
units
mujeres
in the
aportan
hands
en
of
el día
women
a día en
can
esa
be
unidad
more
productiva
visible and show
e
the
ir eliminando
contribution women have.
todas esas barreras que hemos
In that way, we
encontrado.
want to
Con
eliminate
este
many of the
galardón
barriers
lo
that
que
we have
queremos
seen.
es
So
primero
with this
generar
award,
datos
we
porque
want
son muy
to, first of all,
necesarios en el
generate
país
data
para
because
poder
data is
identificar
extremely important in the
y poder
country
hacer
in
política,
order to
pero además para poder
do
ir
public
haciendo estos
policy and
encadenamientos
also to
con
try
el
to
Instituto Costarricense de Turismo para que
have
ojalá el
a better
sellito pueda
link
estar en
with
un
the
menú de un hotel, de un
ecotourism
restaurante en
agency,
una
for
zona rural,
instance, so
donde
that
la
if we
mujer
find a
ofrezca sus
restaurant
productos a estos
where
restaurantes y
women can
podamos
offer
decir que
their
se han ido
products
generando
to
estos
that restaurant
encadenamientos
in
desde la
rural
finca a la
areas,
unidad
that can also
productiva
be
de
a
la
way
mujer
of
hasta
helping
un restaurante en
women's
donde se pueda
activities
promocionar
expand
que
even to a
están consumiendo
restaurant.
y apoyando iniciativas
So
de
the
género
idea
en la
is
zona.
to promote gender
No
initiatives
así
in the area.
también continuamos haciendo el plan de distribución de
And then we continue working on the benefit plan for the RED strategy, and we identified in the framework of resources uh, that are linked to public initiatives. We can take actions to promote participation. And we also try to create a fund with women because women said we need a fund that adapts to our needs. And we came up with a proposal. And when we developed the benefit plan, we identified funds. First, one fund that is specific to women, which is the one I'm presenting now, which is the Inclusive Fund for Sustainable Development. And well, this will be created with the capital from FUNAFIFO in order to promote activities with women. This is a fund of 1.2 million. And the other fund will be a fund for green projects with youth, women, teenagers, children, adults who want to participate in green funds and green projects. And this is also 1.2 million. And we're talking about smaller initiatives that allow women to participate and motivate them to work and to participate. What have we achieved? Well, we know there is a national regulatory framework and also on the international level that has allowed us to have the support of the higher spheres in our country, the higher hierarchies. We have been working with different institutions in order to promote all these actions because there are sources of financing. And of course, there are just a few, but little by little, we have managed. And also, women are there. And processes start with women. And this is the most important thing. They're not just sitting around and identifying their needs and providing us guidance, but rather participating actively with a GCF and result-based payments. We have identified different activities in the framework of the Gender Action Plan. In order to finance actions, we're going to keep on creating capacity among women in the forestry and environmental sector. And we want to escalate pilots that allow us to leverage additional resources and also include actions that allow us to empower more groups of women in our country. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a beautiful afternoon. Thank you very much, Maria Elena, for sharing such a detailed experience of how Costa Rica has achieved results of high impact, and quite particularly how you have redesigned your environmental credits and incentives in order to ensure that women can access and benefit from forest conservation and sustainable development. We hope to be able to continue supporting your efforts as UNDP. As follows, our next speaker, also from Latin America, and it is an honor for me to invite Ms. Karina Barrera, who is Undersecretary of Climate Change of the Ministry of Environment, Water, and Ecological Transition in Ecuador, where the GCF Pro Amazonia project is being developed. And I kindly invite her to join our discussion panel. Ms. Barrera will speak in Spanish, and we have simultaneous interpretation into English. Karina is a chemical engineer with a master's degree in environmental management and also business management with a major in politics, policy and strategy. She has 20 years of experience in the creation, direction, and implementation of environmental projects, circular economy, and sustainable development in public, private, and civil society sectors. Welcome, Karina. We know that part of the Pro Amazonia project has been focusing on the fact that women be acknowledged equally in the sustainable productive chains of coffee, palm oil, livestock farming, and other non-traditional forestry products. What action has the project taken, and what have been one of the major challenges you have faced? Please go ahead. Thank you, Jose. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have a presentation. Maybe can I show it, or someone do that? You can share it yourself, or we can otherwise help you. Maybe you can see it already. Please confirm. Okay, well, yeah, we can see it perfectly. Wonderful. Well, I would like to start by giving you context of what it means to have deforestation in Ecuador. We have 17 million people, 50.5% are women, and the rest are men. And we face the great challenge to preserve our forests. We have 12 million hectares of our territory, which is 51% of our territory. But we have seen by means of the different diagnoses that across our different regions, we have different deforestation drivers, and we have identified also this problem in the Amazonia, which holds 74% of forests. And the main reasons are palm oil production, the monoculture of cocoa, and also coffee. So these are the different realities of each one of the regions, but there are common factors. And one of the most recurrent factor is agricultural production. And we are also talking about soil degradation due to bad agricultural practices. Another driver we have identified is the building of roads and the illegal deforestation, which is one of the great problems we have in Latin America. And in this same context, when part of our Red Plus project has focused on different axes, and the goal is to reduce deforestation and forest degradation, but we have also integrated the protection of hydric resources and biodiversity. And we say that water unites us. And now we are the Ministry of Environment, Water, and Ecological Transition. So we see all these axes in an integral manner. We protect hydric resources. We also seek to diversify rural economies because we know that the lack of livelihoods is one of the main triggers of one of the main threats we have related to deforestation. And another very important part, in Ecuador, we have 18 peoples and 14 indigenous nationalities or nations. So we have a cultural heritage that we want to protect and boost in order to uh, promote their ancestral knowledge. So we have the Amazonia project promoted by the Ministry of Water. And we carried out an analysis that allowed us to see what the gender gaps in the Amazonia are and what actions can be taken in order to boost and promote our program. So we have seen on the one hand that there are access gaps in terms of credits, which is something we saw across the country, and we know that 70% of credits granted for microfinancing are for men and 30% for women. There are some regulatory and legal obstacles. Women are asked some guarantees and some other pre-requirements that are hard to meet before getting a credit. And on the same hand, we also have like biases in terms of how a woman can pay her credit. So we see that there are big gender gaps. In the Amazonia, only 12% of women are owners of their own of the land they work. So I would like to say that this is something very common in the Amazonia. Land property doesn't really exist. This land belongs to the community. So women who are working in their households have less opportunity and less access to credits. Also, femicide is very high in the Amazonia. It's 50% in Amazonia and 43% on the national level. So we're talking about gender violence is a great problem in the Amazonia. This happens due to the lack of proper services, housing, and also the worldview of the different peoples and nations. Also, the amount of hours worked by women is 78 hours, as opposed to men who work 60 hours. And not only in the Amazonia, and also, well, the time women and girls invest in bringing water to the home from rivers or wells. So this is something that we see very often in the Amazonia. Also, education, well, it is important to talk about it. Women and girls, especially indigenous women and girls, are forced to leave school because they have to take care of their siblings, and the time they invest in participating in different social activities is minimal, so that because they acquire a level of responsibility in the home at a very early age. It is important to talk about these realities of the indigenous peoples who live in the Amazonia, especially the local communities. And in this sense, one of the great challenges has been to integrate this or to mainstream this gender situation in the value chains, especially when it comes to coffee, palm tree oil, and cocoa production. Well, many actions have been taken. On the one hand, we have identified the gap we had in terms of technology, land ownership or tenure, and how the land is taken care of, and how women participate in this land protection, and how women also become involved. Men normally say, okay, I'm going to plant and I'm going to chop off trees, but no, women actually integrate their crops into the nature. So women are more sensitive when it comes to the protection of the environment. On the other hand, the economy and the amount of women who are employed is less, and the payment they receive for their services is also lower. Also, sexual harassment in work is a problem, and also women are there is also some gender roles in the work. So sometimes the men are taking care of the hard work, and women are cleaning. So it is important to talk about this, and also the participant of women in the Amazonia is an issue, because they are part of the activities, and they carry out different actions in their own land. They do not hold leadership positions in these agricultural activities. And what we have seen in the program, well, it is important to talk about political will. And today, decision making is in man's hand. So we are in the phase of awareness raising, talking about gender, talking about the importance of women as part of decision making. And this is something that is increasingly important in the different governments. We have been working with 28 Amazonian governments who are adopting this vision, but it hasn't been an easy path. And also the social imagination of gender stereotypes was what a man is supposed to do, what a woman is expected to do. All these things are very defined and fixed. And most of these beliefs are ancestral. So it is important to see, well, where this belongs, that actually belongs to traditional knowledge, and when it doesn't. And well, we have tried to identify both women and men leaders, and we have seen that the newer generations are part of this paradigm change. We have a more robust database now, and you have 3 minutes left. I'm sorry, I think I'm about to finish. And well, I would like to share with you a few results. And I talked about the land management plans. We have more than 4,000 producers, 40% women, who are part of the coffee, cocoa, and livestock farming. And we also have different commodities tables, which are deforestation free. We have 17 bio businesses. 4 of them are led by women, and they have also had access to credits. We also work together with UN Women, where with the training of 250 women who are leaders of their own communities, and we are strengthening financial education processes and creating credit lines directly with financial institutions, where we prioritize women's participation and their products.
I believe there are many other important things that are being accomplished by Pro Amazonia. Perhaps simply say that we are also trying to bring a gender perspective to sustainable purchasing. So trying to guarantee gender mainstreaming in every single aspect of production. So I simply wanted to share some of those challenges that we still have. I really enjoyed the presentation made by Costa Rica, and the fact that they said that there is still a lot to learn, but just to say that we've already made a lot of progress. Thank you very much, Karina, for sharing this experience. I think that a lot has been done to guarantee that women will be recognized in sectors that were traditionally held by men, in order to guarantee a more equitable participation that can also bring benefit to them as they participate in the value chain. It's interesting to see how all the gender social norms are being tackled, how you consider the position of women when going to remote locations, the role of girls and women, and the particular vulnerabilities they fail, as well as they face, as well as symbolic powers that are held in communities, and the need to maybe break down some of those traditional ideas. Thank you very much, Karina, for everything that you shared.
We now move to the African continent, and our last speaker is Marie Verrier, Development Director at the Global She Alliance GCF Ghana She Landscape Emissions Reduction Project. Ms. Veider will be speaking in English. Mary is the Development Director of the Global She Alliance, an industry association with 706 members from 35 countries. She is in charge of establishing public-private partnerships, developing project proposals, and raising funds to support the implementation of the Global She Alliance promotion, quality, and sustainability programs. Welcome, Marie. The Ghana She Low Emissions Reduction Project is looking to ensure women's full and active participation in the public-private partnerships work around restoring the degraded shea parklands. Can you tell us a bit more about this work, including some of the initial steps that have been already taken by the project to achieve this goal? Please, Marie.
Yes, and thank you, Jose. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So if we can go to the next slide, I will start with sharing a bit of the project context. So shea trees is an agroforestry tree that grows along farmland, cropland, fallows, and forest in northern Ghana and also across Africa in the belt that is below the Sahara. Over the past few years, we have seen very strong trends in terms of declining shea tree population. So the number of shea trees has been steadily declining for a number of reasons. Some of them is the loss of fallows that prevents the regeneration of the trees, but a lot is linked to tree cutting, either because of commercial agriculture or mechanization in agricultural land. As well as for charcoal purposes. The shea tree is a tree that is very good as a fire tree. This has several consequences. The first one is from like a business point of view. The decline in shea trees really impacts shea supply on world market. So shea is used globally, mostly in the food sector, as a substitute for cocoa butter in chocolate products, as well as in cosmetics. And you have a situation where demand for shea has been growing steadily over the last 20 years, but at the same time, with the tree being cut, supply has been declining. So if nothing is done for this trend, there is a risk of running out of shea to supply world market in the future. The second impact of this decline in tree population is around rural economic development and women empowerment. So shea trees grow in northern Ghana, in rural areas in which you have very few opportunity outside of agriculture. It's also what we call a woman's crop, in the sense that it's one of the few crops that women collect, process, and sold. And not only are they involved in these steps of the value chain, but it's also one of the crops that they decide how the revenue is spent. And most of the time, they spend it in farming expenses, education, and health. So it's a crop that has a lot of social impact. And finally, the decline in tree population also impacts the climate resilience of northern Ghana. So shea trees grows in agroforestry, and in Africa, agroforestry landscapes are the third carbon sink after primary forest and long-term fallows. We've done a research with the FAO that shows that every year, all across West Africa, shea parklands store about 1.5 million tons of CO2. So preserving the landscape is also key from a climate and environmental perspective. Next slide, please. So at the same time, I think similarly to what has been shared with the other country, you have a gender context that is quite specific. So in northern Ghana, most of the land tenure and the decision around trees tenure and trees management are made by males. So you have a situation in which women are the ones who are benefiting from an economic and a social standpoint from the shea, but they have no say on whether whether their husband can cut the tree on their land, or community members and so on. So they benefit from the resources and they need it for their livelihood, but they have no say on how this resource is managed. Next slide, please. So in that context, the Ghana Shea Landscape Emission Reduction Project seeks to address these two challenges, the decline in the tree population, as well as how can we empower women to benefit more and have more say in how the landscape is managed. The project is a 7-year project, and it's articulated around 4 outputs. So the first one, we are looking at restoring savanna woodland and off-reserve forest using a community management system that has been already developed by the government of Ghana in other parts of the country. The second output is really around like restoring shea parkland and through public-private partnership. And that means that we want to plant and grow about 2 million shea and native trees, but at the same time work with the private sector to ensure that to develop the shea value chain in the country and develop commercially, increase the commercial development of shea. The third output is around Tungia plantation as well as fire management. And finally, we have one output around improved monitoring and improve REDD+ systems. So the project is funded by the GCF. The lead implementer is the Forestry Commission of Ghana with the support of UNDP. And the Global Shea Alliance, the organization that I work for, we are in charge of implementing output 2 around public-private partnership for restoration of shea parklands. Next slide, please. So the way we want to address the gender gap in the project is by using 2 mechanisms, one around group empowerment and another one around addressing economic and environmental issues. By group empowerment, what we want to do is create and strengthen shea cooperative. So create cooperative around consisting of only women, as shea is a woman crop, and really empower them as a cooperative, as opposed to empowering individual women. And what we have seen with this system of empowering the group versus empowering individuals is that it enables women to earn economic power or decision-making power without alienating or threatening upfront the traditional norms of the communities in which we are working. The second way we want to address the gender gap is really by mirroring economic improvement with environmental improvement. So in this project, environmental restoration is going to go hand in hand with economic restoration. So the same cooperative that we are forming, on the economic side, we want to train them to better in terms of better business and cooperative management. We want to give them access to infrastructure and equipment, as well as link them to private sector buyers, so that we are sure that they have an outlet to sell the shea product. And
Mary, there's 1 minute left. Thank you.
And so that they benefit economically. And this cooperative will be the same one who will restore shea parklands by developing community nurseries, planting shea trees, and protecting them. On the community side, we see that these 2 pillars are mutually reinforcing in the sense that the community sees the economic benefits brought by the cooperative, which in turn help incentivize the men to have their women members of the household join the cooperative and be part of it. Next slide, please. So for this project, we are still in a very early phase. We started implementation about 6-7 months ago. So the way we are approaching gender is in two different ways. So first, we want to do, we are doing gender sensitive project management. And this is in the sense that ensuring that in the recruitment of the project staff, whether at the Forestry Commission or as a GSA, we try as much as possible to have equitable representation of women and men. That's the same for the project board that oversees the governance of the project. Similarly, all staff has been or will be trained on gender management to ensure that there is no bias or no issues on that side. And we have also been trying to design our processes in a way that is gender sensitive. In terms of project implementation, so because of this relatively recent start, we are still at the assessment and engagement phase. And so what we are really looking to do is that, for example, when we are assessing to form new community resource management areas, we're making sure that women and men have equal representation in the assessment, and that the voice of women are represented in the assessment. In terms of stakeholder engagement, we ensure that when we talk about the private sector, we are not only engaging male companies, but we are making specific effort to engage women-owned cooperative, women-owned cooperative, and that we help them access a different mechanism that they can use to participate to the project, whether helping them understand how they can participate to the different call for proposals that are being published, or other avenues. So that's it for the presentation. Thanks everyone, and I'm available for any questions.
Merci beaucoup, Mary, for sharing the experiences in Ghana and providing details how we can ensure that women participate in nature-based solutions and benefit from public-private partnerships. Innovative activities as the ones you presented today demonstrate that it is possible to engage the private sector as a key partner to promote gender equality. I would like to thank all our panelists today for sharing your country experiences and lessons learned. You have provided to us with unique opportunity to reflect on the barriers and challenges that prevent women from benefiting from climate forest finance, and inspires us to move forward to ensure that climate finance support multidimensional actions that address ongoing deep-rooted gender barriers and inequality. If we want climate forest finance to be transformative, we need it to contribute to equitable increase of women's and men's access and control over resources, recognize and engage all relevant actors fully and equitably across all genders in all actions, value the unique and complementary knowledge and skills of women and men, improve women's livelihoods and their economic empowerment, and generate new sustainable livelihoods as well as productive and economic opportunities for women in the forest and ofulo sector, as Raquel pointed out in her opening remarks. Thank you so much. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Great. Thank you so much, Jose Vicente, for leading us through this worldwide journey to learn from experiences from different countries on the gender transformative actions they are taking on their REDD+ projects. So to complement this perspective shared by the panel, if colleagues here have just a few more minutes to stick with us, I would like to welcome my colleague Mario Buchui he's the head of the UN REDD program, to provide us some reflections on how programs and partnerships can also systematically promote gender responsive climate forest efforts in the support and finance that they provide. Many thanks for joining us, Mario, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Beth, and a very warm good afternoon to everyone from Geneva. You probably know that today it's the International Day of Forests, and it's such a pleasure for me to have been with you today. I really wanted to, say a personal thank you to Ibu Jenny, to Monique, to Maria Elena, to Karina and Marie. I've learned so much, and you clearly are panelists today, but you are champions for forest and gender equality and women's empowerment on a day-to-day basis. And this is very important. I'm going to just make very few remarks. I know it's we're getting to the end of a long day. The first one is just to say that, as everyone else has noted, we are really moving from an era of goodwill, of negotiations, of piloting, into a decade of massively scaled up action and finance to halt and reverse deforestation and to really promote gender equality and women's empowerment. And therefore to design the finance in a way that is gender inclusive and gender sensitive is of crucial importance. And so the experience that you've shared today is key to really help us make that step forward. That's where the UN RED program, as you've heard at the beginning, is the partnership of UNDP, FAO, and UNEP to support 65 countries in achieving their Paris Agreement objectives on forests. So we've been doing this for the past 10 years, and a gender inclusive, gender sensitive approach promoting gender equality and women empowerment has been always at the core of our work. So what I would like to do in the next 2 minutes is just to quickly highlight how concretely we have been working and how concretely we're going to work in the future, with the hope that that will continue to be of help to you. So we promote and implement a comprehensive gender approach at 3 levels: at the organizational level, at the global level, and at the country level. And I'm quickly just gonna give you a few elements on how we work. At the organizational level, we have an interagency UN RED gender team that helps us integrating gender approaches into everything that we do as UN RED. And I really would like to recognize Beth, whom you've met already, Victoria and Amanda, who are the leaders within the UN RED team, respectively for UNDP, FAO, and UNEP for this gender team. So we have people dedicated to promote this work. The second thing that we do institutionally is that we have a comprehensive gender approach that guides, again, everything that we do at the global, at the regional, at the country level, across every thematic area. Safeguards, we've heard today, forest monitoring also, we've heard today, stakeholders engagement, private sector engagement, deforestation-free supply chain. So we have a gender policy that guides everything we do. And you may have seen our UN RED methodological brief on gender that we developed 5 years ago, and we're still following on those guidelines. And then the third thing that we do institutionally is that we have established a UN RED gender marker rating system. This allows us to track everything that we do in our activities, and to really, it helps us identify areas where we can improve internally and externally. We will soon release a first analysis of what we've learned from the first 3 years of application of this gender marker rating system. So we will certainly love to get your feedback once that document is out. The second thing that we do is at the global level, and it's about sharing knowledge. We organize knowledge exchanges similar to this one that we were very happy to work together with colleagues at UNDP. We did one just at the time of COP26 that brought all stakeholders around the globe to reflect on gender responsive and gender sensitive finance. We produce knowledge products. I just would like to highlight 2. You might want to check them out, and perhaps we can put the links on the chat. One is a gender and RED info brief on transformational change and innovation on RED action. And the second one, very practical, it's a checklist for gender responsive workshops. Finally, at the country level, what we really do is to provide technical assistance to partner countries and every stakeholder. We do that in a way that is tailored to the specific needs of the countries and the constituency, but really our aim is that of work in synergy with everything else that is happening there. So with this, just wanted to give you a flavor of what we do and how we do it. And just to conclude, I want to go back to what Rachel said at the start, her message of hope, that it is possible to enter a new generation of climate responsive finance. And with that, to really massively and concretely scale up inclusion, recognition, leadership, and action. Absolutely, I agree with the message. It is possible. Working together is the way to go. So I'm very glad we came together today to share this experience. Back to you, Beth.
Thank you so much, Mario, for sharing your insightful views and a clear way forward how different organizations and partnerships can systematically help promote gender from the inside out, as we can say. So we really appreciate that. So in recognition of the time, I know we're running late. I really appreciate all the participants that have stayed with us. We really appreciate it. What I would like to do now is pass the floor to my colleague, Joseph Gari, who's the Senior Policy Advisor from UNDP Climate and Forest team. And he will be providing us with some closing remarks on behalf of UNDP. Thank you so much, Joseph, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much. On behalf of UNDP, I wish to thank the organizers and the speakers for this inspiring event that have presented innovations and lessons that address three major international objectives for sustainability simultaneously: climate action, forest protection, and gender equality. The projects that were showcased here today reveal the wide range of innovations that governments, development stakeholders, and the organizations in charge of climate finance undertake together to support gender-responsive approaches for climate and forest. It is a complex effort, requires professional education, requires innovations, and requires constant work, but they all demonstrate it is doable. And not only it is doable, such efforts to mainstream gender and to empower women can leverage the potential of climate finance. And those cases show us that these efforts have no borders. They are feasible across the planet, from Ecuador to Indonesia, from Brazil to Ghana and to Costa Rica. We also need to collect and assess and disseminate all these successful practices. So development innovations, like the ones we heard today, can inspire development stakeholders across the world. In this sense, we are delighted to launch today a new publication, The End of Business as Usual, Mainstreaming Gender in Jurisdictional REDD+ Approaches, which highlights the success stories and the lessons on gender mainstreaming in the portfolio of the Governor's Task Force on Climate and Forests, which is implemented by UNDP in many jurisdictions across the world. This publication will be available today on the internet and through social media, and I understand my colleagues are also putting in the chat box of this event now. In addition, to support all these cross-disciplinary approaches, UNDP sets up specific platforms for collective innovation. In this sense, last year, we established the Gender and REDD+ platform for Latin America, which is currently under a pilot stage. This platform is a digital lab for capacity building and knowledge exchange, in which national project teams, civil servants, UNDP specialists, gender experts, and project stakeholders work together to analyze problems and options around gender mainstreaming and to design solutions, implement them, and monitor their impact. In summary, all these practices and mechanisms are deployed strategically to break down the deep-rooted structural causes of gender inequality and to address the gender gaps, which are pretty complex. We want to go beyond ordinary action. we want to go beyond low-hanging fruits with regards to gender. This is what the projects and countries today presented. They want a structural change, and for that they require innovations with collective thinking and collective action. In our own house, in UNDP, we are strongly committed to building a workforce that also reflects gender balance and human diversity. Because ultimately, social justice will only be achieved by collective and inclusive action, where everyone engage fully and with fairness. Once again, thank you to all the presenters and participants for engaging us. We look forward to continue these efforts to create gender equality as a critical element of sustainable development across policies, projects, and institutions, and to help making gender equality a rule in climate finance. Thank you very much, and thank you, everybody. Thanks, Beth.
Thanks so much, Joseph. I really appreciate that. And with that, I would like to thank all colleagues here for joining us today on this lovely morning, afternoon, or evening. And we hope that this helps everyone start to or continue thinking about the new generation of climate, different ways we can integrate gender into climate forest finance that we all support. So once again, thank you so much. And I just want to do a quick round of applause to all of our interpreters today. They did a fantastic job. Thank you so, so much. Never an easy feat to do these many different languages for one event. And if colleagues wouldn't mind here, is it possible that we could, some colleagues here and participants, would they mind turning on the camera so we can take a picture? Would that be okay? I know some of us, I know some are already leaving, but I'm just going to quickly snap some pictures and I'll count to 3. Is that okay with everyone? Perfect. Really appreciate it. Okay, so 1, 2, and 3, smile. Thank you. And maybe just one more. 1, 2, 3, and smile. Thank you. Okay, well, I wish everyone a great rest of your day. Thank you once again. And yeah, let's continue to keep on sharing knowledge. And hopefully this is just, again, a start of a very much needed and ongoing conversation. Thank you.